Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am in safe, pleasant, tranquil New York City, happy to be bringing you yet another edition of the world's longest-running poker strategy podcast. I want to thank you guys for your comments on last week's episode where we were discussing pre-flop ranges and using some solver analysis to figure out what we should and shouldn't be doing in various short stacked situations. Now, we'll get to some more solver work a little bit later in this episode, but first, I want to talk a little bit about my Twitch stream, which is twitch.tv/ClaytonComic. I enjoy playing poker on the internet with people watching and judging and criticizing and sometimes wanting to engage in actual analysis of the hands and the decisions and not just complaining about their own bad beats or generally trolling. And I think it's fun. You know, I really do enjoy playing online more when I have a bit of an audience, even though, to be fair, my stream is relatively new and sometimes I have maybe like a dozen people or sometimes even fewer than that. Although we've gotten up to 900 at one point. Of course, that was mostly people from Eastern Europe trying to get the password to the TPE free roll, which happens every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Although I'm not sure what the status is this week because I hear there's some sort of football game going on. I'm more on that later. Anyway, the streaming process on Twitch is fun. I mean, it took, as you guys know, a really long time for me to get my laptop set up, or more correctly, jerry-rigged so that I could actually even do a Twitch stream in the first place. And now, you know, sometimes we get into it. We have some really good conversations, people speaking eloquently and thoughtfully, sharing their opinions on decisions that you make during the game of tournament poker. Some people don't contribute that much to the conversation, which is also fine because they just kind of want to passively enjoy what's going on, and maybe they'll put something in the chat like, good luck today, Clayton, I hope you win, stuff like that, which is also great. You know, one of the things I really like about Twitch is you can treat it like a TV show, like you're watching, I don't know, like the World Poker Tour broadcast on television or something, and just watch and enjoy. But what it gives you that I think makes it special, what it gives you is the ability to interact with the host. There have been so many times in my life I've watched a baseball game or a poker tournament or whatever I watch on TV, and I want to say something to the broadcaster, like, actually, you're wrong. He wasn't acquired from the Yankees. He was acquired from the Red Sox in 2021, you know, whatever. My point is I really enjoy interacting with people in real time, or, well, I'm on a 90 to 120 second delay usually, so maybe not exactly real time, but close enough. But what I really enjoy is that interaction and the conversations we can have. Even sometimes in the chat, we'll be talking about comedy or football or something else besides poker, even while I'm playing 3 or 4 tables of No Limit Hold'em tournaments online. I really enjoy most of those interactions. I would say the vast majority, maybe upwards of 99%. And then you get the occasional hater. Now, this is a person that has existed since the advent of the internet. Someone whose sole purpose is to put other people down. And they should have an Olympics for haters, because I've seen some incredible haters in my time. In 2018, when I made the top 30 of the World Series of Poker main event, maybe 15 or 20 minutes after busting out of that tournament and realizing I would not be crowned the world champion and I would not be winning $10 million, I made a huge mistake, which is I opened up Twitter. And there was a person who found me on Twitter and decided to send me the only message he has ever sent me, ever. I had never heard from this person before this, and I haven't heard from him since. But he wanted me to know that I blew it, I missed my once-in-a-lifetime big chance, and I played like an idiot, and that I was horrible at poker, and that I should quit the game. And he's just on and on and on, just railing on me, just moments after I lost. Well, okay, I don't know if you can say lost when I won like $250,000, but let's just say I busted out. And it's instantly, this guy felt the need to just be a hater and tell me how much I suck at poker. And I don't know what that guy's doing today. I assume he's out there living his best life. But as I looked at this gentleman's Twitter feed, all he does is insult people, whether it's right when they bust out of a poker tournament or a boxer who just got knocked out. He will go and find that boxer. It could be like a welterweight or even a featherweight boxer, and he will just destroy them. You had a terrible match. You blew your shot. This person's goal in life is to rub salt in other people's wounds. And I bring this guy up because I've seen different versions of him over the years, and we actually had a hater on my live stream just the other night. Now, look, guys, I believe there are so many different ways to go through life. You can lift other people up. You can knock them down. You can mostly leave other people alone and mind your own business. But, I was kind of enjoying it. I'm not going to lie. My mods, shout out to Ghost of M, the greatest moderator in the history of Twitch. He gave him a fair warning. He said, ease up a little bit on the criticism. This is a warning. And then the guy went, doubled down like a little bit deeper and started like trying to hit me below the belt. And immediately he was banned. But I'll be honest, like I've developed such a thick skin over my 20 years in stand-up comedy and poker for that matter, that, I can take all the bad beats. I can take the heckles. I can take the criticism. It really was not getting under my skin, although it was sort of changing the vibe in general in the chat. And so I'm glad that ultimately he was banned from the stream. But, what is your experience with hecklers and haters and people like that? I wonder if they exist in every industry, or is it just the fact that I have a camera on me or a spotlight on me when I'm on stage and a microphone? Are these the things that make people want to tear me down? Like, does the fact that I exist in this space cause certain members of the community to want to come after me or something? I don't know, guys, but it just kind of, it makes me question society and what we've become and what we are becoming. And sometimes it just makes me look kind of bigger picture at the world around us, where some people, they seem to exist only to the detriment of others. And it's just purely fascinating. I mean, it's almost scientifically, I want to study these people. Like, what is the psychology of a hater? Anyway, share your opinions. You can go on Twitter, where I live online at Clayton Comic. We also have a Discord just for Tournament Poker Edge, and you can contribute to the conversation there. There's a link in the description of this podcast, and you can join our Discord absolutely free. Anyway, streaming is fun. I'll be doing some more. One thing I really like to do is just kind of play with GTO Wizard on the stream, and then you guys can see like my thought process as I try to figure out what the solver is going to say is the perfect GTO strategy for this, that, or the other situation, and just how often I'm wrong, kind of letting me know how far from theoretically optimal my game actually is, and what I have to learn if I'm ever going to be able to compete against expert competition without being exceptionally exploitable. So yeah, that's fun. That's something I've been doing. Sometimes I'll just warm up with a little GTO Wizard just to kind of get the brain working and start to figure out ranges and stuff like that. And sometimes we jump right into the action. But anyway, I'd love it if you would either follow or subscribe to twitch.tv/Clayton Comic. And now let's review the hand that we discussed last week in our strategy segment. It comes from day 2D of the World Series of Poker main event 2024. The blinds were 501K with a 1K big blind ante. And the hijack, Eleron Pilo made it 3K, so 3X, the big blind, from the hijack with pocket aces. And Mark Davis, next to act in the cutoff, made the call with ace-jack offsuit. Now, these players were pretty deep. Pilo had 91K, and Davis had him covered by about 20. So we're playing 91 big blinds effective, and the two guys saw the flop heads up. Of course, GTO Wizard is not going to have a problem with the open, although the sizing is a little bigger than the solver recommends for the situation. Now, should you be calling with ace-jack offsuit if you are Mark Davis? You are in position, but you have the worst relative position, meaning that if anyone else enters this pot, you will need to act right after the pre-flop raiser on all future streets, which is not good, especially like if, for example, the big blind comes along, which is why I would typically play this hand as either a 3-bet or fold. But let's see what the wizard has to say. And guys, already we have one surprise, at least from my standpoint. Ace-jack offsuit is about 50-50 between calling and folding, with just a very, very rare 3-bet sprinkled in. So yeah, I'm surprised. I admit that I'm surprised by this. I would think this hand would play better as a 3-bet. You can take control of the pot after the flop. You can also fold to a 4-bet pretty easily because ace-jack is probably close to the bottom of a value 3-betting range, although the solver is telling me it's not really in that range except for about 3.4% of the time, and the rest it's either a call or a fold. So given those options, I think I would just have folded in Mark Davis's shoes, but Mark made the call, and now we're going to see the flop, which comes king of diamonds, 10 of spades, tray of spades. King 10 tray with 2 spades, and the original raiser, Pilo, has ace of spades, ace of diamonds, and Mark Davis also has a spade. He's got the jack of spades in his hand as well. So now, with 8,500 in the pot, it's up to Pilo. Should he bet his aces? And if so, what sizing should he choose? Now, this feels like a spot where we would often want to check and see what the in-position player wants to do. Possibly go for a check raise. You've got the overpair, backdoor spades, backdoor straight. It feels like a good spot maybe to include this in your check raising range. I don't know. Certainly, if I were to bet, I think I would go for a small sizing, maybe like 1/3 of the pot. But let's see what the solver has to say. And sure enough, it's quite a mix. Oh, I should mention, Pilo actually bombs it. He puts in 7,000 into the 8,500 pot. So, wow, that's a big bet there. Almost a pot-sized bet. So let's take a look and see what GTO Wizard has to say about pocket aces in this spot. Yeah, we do want to check about 21% of the time. And the rest is a mix. We bet anywhere from 2 big blinds all the way up to 10 big blinds. Although the 10 big blind over bet, 150% pot bet is only 1%. So you could pretty much rule that out. So yeah, it prefers a smaller sizing. 38% of the time, we are betting 2 big blinds. 31% of the time, we're betting half the pot. And bombing it, it's not completely off the table, although it's a low frequency play at 9%. So yeah, I'm not really sure we can say solver approved, but the lesson overall is that when you have aces in this spot, you have a lot of options, okay? You can do anything from a check all the way up to an overbet, but you want most of your strategy in this spot to be smallish bets, 1/3 to half the pot, and nothing bigger than that the vast majority of the time. So he does bet big, 7K into 8,500, and Davis made the call with ace-jack offsuit. He's got a gut shot straight draw. He's also got a backdoor jack-high flush draw that he doesn't know would be no good if it happens to come in. So let's see what the solver has to say about this call. Yeah, here again, it's roughly the same as it was pre-flop, approximately 50-50 between calling and folding. Very rarely anything else. Only 3% of the time are we raising this bet. Now, maybe versus a smaller bet, we're going to have certainly more raising in the mix. But yeah, when your opponent bets really big, your raise frequency naturally has to go down. And I think we can all see why. We don't want to get pot committed with a gut shot and then have to fold, which would just be a disaster. Anyway, facing a bomb, it's 50-50 roughly between calling and folding. So let's go to the turn with 22,500 after Mark Davis made that call. The turn came the Queen of Clubs, which is, I think, a pretty ugly card. Okay, fine. It gives us a gut shot straight draw. Like now, Eleron Pilo can make a Broadway straight with a jack on the river. But otherwise, I think it's a card that I wouldn't like to see very much. And I remember saying last week I would either check or bet very small on this ugly turn card. And let's see what the solver has to say about Pilo's decision. I really didn't like his choice. He went for almost 19,000 into 22,000. So again, a very, very large, almost pot size bet sizing here, even though it's not a great card for his overall range and certainly not a great card for his particular hand. I think I might advocate for a larger bet sizing if this had been the Queen of Spades, giving me the nut flush draw and a gut shot straight draw and an overpair, but I didn't really see the point of making this bet size on the Queen of Clubs. But let's see what GTO Wizard thinks. Yeah, it's a check, guys. 42% of the time we are checking and the rest is a mix, but we're only doing this big sizing, pot size sizing, or a little bit less, only 9% of the time. So that lets you know this is, again, a very low frequency, although not completely unapproved decision. Now let's look at Mark Davis. He's got the nuts, right? He makes the ace high straight on the turn with his ace jack, and facing this large bet, he decides to stick it in. I'm not really sure whether I would play it that way. I mean, certainly you can get action from sets and possibly two pair hands, but is it worth it to lose all of your opponent's one pair hands that don't have a flush draw? Because I think they all have to fold for this huge pot-sized raise on the turn. So let's check the line using GTO Wizard, and sure enough, the Wizard wants to call about 60% of the time. We call, and we never actually shove. When we raise much smaller than this, maybe even half the size. So really just a click back. So I think that the Wizard wants to keep opponent in, keep his bluffs in, maybe try to get him to move all in himself over the top. I don't know how many players would do that versus a min raise on the turn, which would look awfully scary to me. But maybe a set of kings or something would do that. Anyway, guys, the shove is not solver approved. And we raise to about half the shove, about 40% of the time. So, yeah, it appears that Davis made a blunder in this situation. And it may have cost him a lot of chips because Pilo, of course, with one pair, found the fold. All right, guys, if you're interested in working with GTO Wizard and improving your game with the greatest strategy tool ever invented for poker players, I've got a great deal for you. Click the link in the description of this podcast. It's our affiliate link, our partnership link with GTO Wizard. You can get 24 hours access to all of GTO Wizard's features. And then when you're ready to buy, because you clicked that link, you save 10% off of your first purchase because you clicked gtowizard.com/p/TPE. All right, let's move on. I want to do another hand from the same day, day 2D of the 2024 main event. 600, 1200 with a 1200 big blind ante. And we have a seat open at this table, so we're playing 8-handed. And the action folds around to the low jack, which is only 2 folds at an 8-handed table. And it's a player named Sean Raphael, who min raises to 2400 off of a healthy stack of 102,000. The action folds to the button, and I haven't said what Sean Raphael opened with yet. But here we are on the button. We're going to play this hand from the perspective of Jose Magana of Mexico, and he's got a stack of 59,000. So right around 50 big blinds, and he's got pocket queens. I would go for a large 3-bet here. When the raise comes from early position, and you've got pocket queens, and more importantly, this awkward-ish stack sizing. He's got 50 big blinds. His M is 20. I think we want to size up here. I would maybe go for like 9,000 or maybe even 10,000. What I'm trying to do is get heads up with the original razor with an SPR of 3 or less. Roughly the sizing I would make with my entire 3-betting range, whether I have ace king or pocket queens or maybe ace jack suited. Mix in a few bluffs like ace 5 of hearts and 8-7 of clubs or something occasionally. But yeah, I don't really like Magano's decision. He decides to 3-bet to just 6,000. I mean, this is really not a bet that's going to accomplish the goal here. It's not even 3x. Pretty much all of the hands that open have to call this 3-bet. And you might say, well, what's wrong with that? We have pocket queens. We want all of those hands to call. But now you're just going to have an awkward SPR post-flop, and you could have controlled that pre-flop with a bigger 3-bet sizing. So let's take a look. Rafael does make the call with a hand that I have yet to reveal. And now there's 15,000 in the middle, and Magana still has about 54,000 behind. So his SPR is in that 3.5 to 4 range, which is just so awkward to play. The most likely hand we're going to have on the flop is 1 pair when we start with 2 queens. And so you really don't want to have an awkward SPR like 3.5. Anywhere from 3.5 to 6 is kind of ugly and difficult to play with 1 pair, especially an overpair. And the reason for this, guys, is if the money goes all in at any point, your pair of queens is unlikely to be good. But by the time that happens, you are likely to feel pot committed, especially when you have the overpair. Whereas if we just raise it a little bigger pre-flop, then we don't have to worry about making too many hero folds, holding pocket queens on like a 10 high board. It's fine because you're just more committed at that point, and it's easier to call it off. And then you don't get outplayed when they semi-bluff with a gut shot and a backdoor flush draw or whatever the case may be. So just make your life easier. Alex Fitzgerald says one of the keys to winning No Limit Hold'em tournaments is when you build up a big pot with superior hands and you have position against inferior opponents. So this feels like a spot for Magano to at least have 3, if not 4 out of 4 of those criteria. But instead, he only made it 6K, and now he's going to have some tough decisions, especially when the flop comes king of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 6 of spades. King 10-6, and villain checks. Now, in the previous hand, we had a flop of king 10 tray. There was a flush draw on the board. This one's rainbow. But otherwise, these are pretty similar flops. And when we have a pair of aces, I suggested we should make a small bet on the flop. And here, holding a pair of queens, I think if we're going to bet, it's got to be small. Like, you're really targeting a hand like Jack 10 suited, maybe pocket jacks that didn't want a 4-bet pre-flop, pocket 9s, maybe could call a bet here on the flop. You got to think about what you're trying to get action from. And then, of course, all the gut shots like ace jack, ace queen, 9-8, and so on. So you want to make sure that your sizing isn't so big that you lose those hands and that you can actually get a little bit of value for your queens. Although I think the time to get the value was pre-flop before the king came on the flop, but that's results-oriented thinking, and we don't do that. I would bet about 4,500 here, somewhere between a quarter and a third of the pot, and then I think all those hands I just named should at least call some of the time, and so we'll be happy about that. Instead, Magana puts in 6K and Rafael calls. So I really don't have a big problem with this. I just think it's a slightly larger sizing than I would like to see in this spot. It's bigger than 1/3 of the pot, and that seems like it's a bit too big, especially given that SPR we already mentioned. We don't want to put too many chips in, or we might not be able to fold our queens later on. So now there's 27,000 in the middle, and the turn comes the 5 of diamonds. So our board is now king of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 6 of spades, 5 of diamonds. King 10, 6, 5 with 2 diamonds, and villain checks once again. I think with pocket queens in this situation, especially having put so many of our chips in there already, I think this is a clear check behind. You know, we've got to control this pot. What would happen if we bet again with pocket queens and then we got check raised? Are we just going to always fold? It's pretty disastrous if the queens are ever good, especially given how much of our stack is already in the pot at this point. So yeah, I think this is just a pot control. It screams pot control to me. Instead, Magano bets 10,000 into the 27,000 pot, and I don't really know what he's going for. I suppose this is a kind of bet. It's like, well, if I bet the turn, now I can check behind on the river, but he's afraid if he checks behind on the turn, he's going to face a big bet that he won't know how to respond to on the river. And generally speaking, when you make a bet that is designed to make your own life easier, that bet's a mistake, at least theoretically. We all want to have easier decisions, and a good part of poker strategy is about manipulating situations so that your decisions are easier than those of your opponents, but usually it's not worth the chips that it costs to do so. I would check it back here and just play poker on the river. If the guy bets into me again, it's live. Pick up a tell, figure out what's going on, talk to him a little bit, check out his breathing, look at his feet, whatever you got to do. But I don't believe it's worth 10,000 chips to kind of buy myself a free showdown on the end. But it appears that that's what Magano is trying to do here. I'm guessing with this bet of 10K into 27K. And then Rafael makes the call, and now going to the river with 47,000 in the middle, the river comes the 10 of hearts, pairing the board, king 10, 6, 5, 10, and Rafael checks. And I'm yelling at the screen, please don't bet that river. There's just no value to be made. Are you trying to get jacks to call you one more time? I mean, if your opponent had a 10, he's got trips now. If he's got a king, he's never folding it. I just don't know what could possibly call a river bet that queens are beating. And thankfully, Magano saw that himself and makes the check behind, which is the only decision he made in this entire hand that I actually approve of, and he loses to villain's king jack suited. So yeah, I think that this hand shows the importance of pot control and not losing chips that you don't need to lose. I don't understand the point of this turn bet. I don't like it one bit, and I think that over time, if we spend a lot of chips kind of buying a free showdown, we are wasting so many chips, and that will really eat into your profits and into your ability to cash in more poker tournaments if it becomes a habit for you. And that'll do it for this episode. Guys, if you have a chance, please give us a good rating, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast for the algorithm and our digital robot overlords. And for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart.